So I put Sam Darnold as number 26 on this list, so one spot ahead of him, I have the person who was drafted 4 spots behind him, and that's Josh Allen. He's definitely an interesting player. I mean, he's clearly got some talent, but it's not a traditional talented type quarterback. I mean, he definitely is more of a unique quarterback. He's got a rather interesting skill set, and let's just jump into it. Like on this play, for example, I think this play could sort of illustrate some of my negatives I have with Josh Allen. What's going to happen is it's going to be a cover one hole, and those are going to be the routes that the Buffalo Bills receivers are going to be running. And so there's several routes that actually would be pretty good in this coverage, but one route in particular that could be good would be that one. It's a little bit of a tough angle, however, if that receiver can win his one-on-one matchup, then he could get relatively open, and that could be a place where Allen could try to throw the ball to. So that is where he's going to look. On paper, it does look like it could work out okay. However, in practice, it's actually not going to work out very well at all, largely because of what's going on right now, right what you see on the screen. There's some contact here, and that's a problem because now that receiver is going to take longer to try to get to where he wants to be, and he won't be as open when he does finally get there. But actually, that's not the end of the world. Yes, that receiver will take a little bit longer to get to the top half of the screen and get open, but he still could potentially get open. There still is that opportunity. The Bills' offensive line is doing their job on this one, so Allen has time. However, there's going to be one other problem that develops here, and it's largely because of look at what Josh Allen is doing. He is looking at the receiver he wants to throw this ball to. Which, okay, understandable, especially because you thought that receiver was going to get open relatively quickly, but because he's doing that, this now creates another problem, and that problem is going to be that New England Patriot right over there. He's doing a very good job of being very aware and looking at Allen and realizing where this throw could potentially go to. So when Allen does try to throw to that receiver who did end up getting open, now another Patriot is able to run over and intercept this pass. This is far from a bad play by any means. I really don't blame Allen at all for this one. I mean, the reality is Allen had no idea that receiver wasn't going to be able to get open here. The reality is he had no way of knowing that receiver was going to get tied up and not be able to get free as quickly. But if this was Tom Brady, for example, he probably would have looked up and realized, okay, I can't throw this ball deep because there's a defender who's taking away that, so instead I'll just hit the guy in the flat and pick up a guaranteed 5 to 10 yards. Of course, it's unfair to compare a rookie quarterback to Tom Brady, but that's basically my point, is that he's kind of a rookie quarterback. It's not like he's going out there and making bad read after bad read, but he will sometimes occasionally not make the great read. It's kind of like a hockey goalie, where there's some hockey goalies that stop every puck they're supposed to stop, but sometimes there'll be good shots that they just can't stop. And you'll say you can't really blame them for that, but at a certain point, you have to make sure that you can make some good saves as well. It's not enough to just make the ones you're supposed to make. Well, as a quarterback, it's the same thing. It's not always enough to just make the reads you're supposed to make. Sometimes you have to make some good reads, and Allen doesn't really do that a ton. There was also this play where it's going to be a cover one linebacker blitz, and those are going to be the routes that the Bills receivers will be running, and most specifically, that one route right there could be the route that Allen could look to throw to. Like on this play, it's going to be a cover one blitz, and those are the routes that the Bills receivers will be running, and there will be one route that could be open right there, that out route at the end. And as of right now, that receiver is in a little bit of an okay position. He is slightly up to the top half of the screen, but he's not really that open at all, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend making this throw. I would instead say maybe take a deep shot, or maybe even try to run the ball since it is man coverage. But Allen is going to try to force this throw anyways, and he also kind of throws a duck, and it results in an interception. It just wasn't a particularly great throw, but it also wasn't a great decision, because he basically had a mailbox he had to fit it through, and because he wasn't able to fit it through the mailbox, it resulted in an interception. So yes, not a great throw, but it wasn't a terrible throw either. It wasn't an interception bad throw. It really was just the decision itself that made it tough for Allen. It's kind of things like that where sometimes you see that play and you say, oh wow, he's not a great player, he didn't make a great throw, but the reality is that's such a tough throw to make. Allen can make some good throws, but he makes things difficult on himself when he makes reads like that, and I do think he is capable of making better reads, but again, he's a rookie, he's got to kind of learn exactly what he has to do. Plays like that work a lot better in college than they do in the NFL. You have to realize with the talent being so much raised in every position, how much more difficult it is, and you have to be able to keep up. There's a reason why a rookie quarterback has never won a Super Bowl in the NFL. It's very tough to do. It's very tough to be a successful rookie quarterback, and Josh Allen was okay. 25th in the league according to Jackson. That's not the end of the world. That's pretty decent. Could be better, but could be a lot worse too, and I think he showed some problems, especially the fact that, he was heavily criticized when he got drafted. One thing about Allen too that I have noticed is I kind of feel like he sometimes gets too locked in on certain reads and won't make other reads even when that's what he probably should make. Like on this play, one of the first things you'll see is that look at all the Patriots who are within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Literally all of them. And not to mention the fact that there is a Patriot who's lined up with each Bill in this area, including a linebacker lined up with the running back. This gives them a pretty good idea that it is going to be man coverage. And so since it is, Allen is going to alert here. Allen is going to alert to the next play, because he knows that the second play that they're going to be running is actually one that could be a very good play in this situation. Oh, and by the way, you might be wondering why the Patriots are running a cover 0 in this situation. Well, that's because this is a 4th down and 3 here. So this is a desperate situation. But sometimes on 4th downs like this, it can actually be a good decision to try to take a shot deep, because everyone is trying to make sure that you don't get a first down. And so since those are the routes that the Buffalo Bills are going to be running, this actually could be a very good situation for the Bills if they can convert on something. Although one problem, if you notice right here is that the Bills aren't all fully on the same page right yet. Most specifically, those two receivers right there are still communicating as to what routes they're supposed to be running. They're not fully sure exactly which two routes they have to run right yet. But despite that, Allen doesn't notice that, and the ball is going to get snapped with them still not fully on the same page just yet. And the reason for that is because he doesn't care, because that's the receiver he's going to try to throw it to, that's the receiver he wants to throw it to, and he isn't really concerned about anything else. But of course, the problem with that is that that receiver is not open right now. So despite the fact that that's where Allen was going to be trying to throw the ball initially, now he's not really open at all. But even with that, Allen is just throwing the ball there. That's already where he wants to make this throw. He's already made his decision, and that's a bad decision in my opinion. Because if you notice that Bill right there, he's already kind of open, and he would have been even more open if Allen just took an extra second to make sure everyone knew what was going on, knew what the play was, instead of trying to hurry it up. Basically, he was trying to maximize one of his options instead of trying to maximize all of his options, and that kind of came back to bite him here because that one option ended up not being a good one. It is kind of understandable, especially on a 4th and 3. You see an option that could potentially be open, and you just want to hit that option, but really if he just took his time a little bit there, he could have had a touchdown instead of an incompletion in Patriots football. That very easily could have been a touchdown. One more play to kind of explain about what I'm talking about in terms of his maybe lack of making great reads while he still can make some decent reads. This one's going to be a cover 3 zone, and they do have a route that can be pretty effective against cover 3. Because as you see, once this play develops, the receiver that Allen wants to throw to is going to get kind of past those linebackers, and he's before the safeties. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for Allen to try to make a shot there. However, the problem is he's once again staring down the receiver that he wants to make this throw to, and he's getting ready to make that throw in that direction. Not to mention, he has a relatively long release on this play, so that's going to allow a defensive lineman to basically put his hands up and tip the ball, which is definitely very important. But okay, enough about the bad. Let's get into some of the good. And one of the good things about Josh Allen is he has a big arm. He can definitely throw the ball very deep and very far, and that can be effective in several different ways, not just with the deep ball. Like on this one, it is going to be a cover 1 hole, and they do have a receiver running a curl route right over there on the bottom half of the screen. So again, on paper, this route could actually work out very well, because it is a curl route, and curl routes are good against man coverage. I mean, just think about when you play backyard football. Running a curl route means that you can stop, and usually the person who's in charge of covering you will keep going. So it can be a pretty good route to run, especially against this type of coverage, because there is no one towards the sideline, so all that receiver has to do is win his one-on-one matchup. But the problem with this play is it's actually relatively far down the field, so Allen's going to have to make a pretty decent throw on this one. Not only will he have to get the timing down and the accuracy down, but he'll also have to be able to throw it hard enough and fast enough that the defensive back doesn't realize what's going on beforehand and get in position to knock it away. In fact, if he makes this throw poorly, it can actually result in a pick 6 potentially. But instead, he makes a perfect throw. He times it maybe a little bit too slow. Maybe would have liked it to get there a little bit quicker, but as a whole, it was a very good throw, and it resulted in a catch. One thing you might notice as well is he kind of took an extra step further back in the pocket than he actually had to. He probably could have stayed a little bit closer up in the pocket. Granted, I know playing for the Buffalo Bills, you probably do get a little bit worried about there being pressure from time to time, but in that play, there wasn't any pressure. He could have probably stayed a little bit closer up, because it's already a relatively long throw, and he made it an extra couple of yards longer, which again, in the scheme of things, isn't anything too major, but those little things do add up over the course of a game. But that's a small thing. That is definitely a nitpick. The reality is that was, as a whole, a very good play from Josh Allen. Like on this one, it's going to be a Tampa 2, which of course is similar to a cover 2 zone, but with the one exception being that the middle linebacker is much farther deep. And that's actually going to play in here, because this is actually going to make that window a lot smaller, since the Bills do have a receiver running right there, which usually would be in a gap in coverage, but since the middle linebacker is further deep, it's not going to make that gap in coverage a lot smaller. Because as you see, once this play develops, of course that receiver is going to do a pretty good job of staying underneath the safety who's in charge of covering the top left-hand corner of the screen, but that's not anything too difficult. That's something you should be able to do. I mean, that safety's entire job here is to just make sure he keeps everyone in front of him, so he is usually going to let you get in front of him. But the one key thing to watch here is actually that linebacker right there. That linebacker is the key guy to watch here. Because typically, he'd have to stay a little bit further out. The ball could be going to the left or to his right. However, since he knows that since it's the cover 2, there is going to be a linebacker who's further behind him, he pretty much knows that the only way this is going to be a completed pass is if it's to the top half of the screen. So he can already lead in that direction. So meaning that this is going to be a tight window for Allen to hit it through, but Allen is going to hit it through, and it results in a completion. That's really not a big window at all. It really isn't. It kind of looks like it's rather big, but that's also just because Josh Allen timed it perfectly, and he also threw it fast enough that there was no way a defender could move over and get into the play. I think a lot of people, when talking about Josh Allen, kind of say, well, what else is he good at besides running and looking good in shorts? But he is a quarterback, and he can throw the ball relatively well. That is something he can absolutely do. But I also feel like that's kind of an unfair criticism people will often say to other players. Like, you see it a lot with Lamar Jackson, who is actually higher up on this list. I think he's very good. People say about Josh Allen, he wouldn't be that good if he couldn't run the ball. But my response to that is, so what? You can run the ball. Cake wouldn't be very good if you don't put frosting on it, but that doesn't mean that cake isn't good. You see it with Cam Newton a lot as well. Well, how good of a pocket passer could he be? Well, who cares? First off, all the guys I just mentioned absolutely can be very good pocket passers, so the whole argument in general is just really silly in my opinion. But certain things are going to make you great no matter what. Maybe that's just going to be your accuracy, maybe that's going to be you have a big arm, or maybe it's going to be your running ability like it is with Josh Allen. But you're going to have something that makes you great if you're going to be in the NFL. You need something to make you great, and Josh Allen has that. He has a great ability to run. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in the league already, and he's only been there for 1 year. Like on this play, it's a cover one blitz, and those are going to be the routes that the Bills receivers will be running. And worth noting that man coverage is one of the best times you can run the ball. As we all know, if you're a quarterback, man coverage is when you want to run the ball, because there's not many defenders who are looking at the quarterback, because they're looking at the guy who they're in charge of covering. And not to mention, there will be sections of the field where there's no defenders in the area. Like for example, right over there's not going to be any defenders in the area because there's not going to be any Bills in that area. First things first, what you'll notice about Josh Allen on this play is that he is not looking to be running the ball on this one. He is looking to throw it, and that is one thing I like about Allen. He doesn't necessarily look to run the ball most of the time. Every now and then he will, but even then I feel like he chooses his spots, and he chooses his spots wisely. But for the most part, he is a pocket passer who just can run, as opposed to a guy who always looks to run and then will occasionally try to throw the ball. But anyways, that's the read that he was trying to look at here, and that receiver is just nowhere close to being open, so he's not even going to bother in that direction. So then what does he do from here? Well, he knows that there is going to be a gap closer to the bottom half of the screen that will have no defender, and so he's just going to take off in that direction. Another thing is his acceleration. I mean, he gets up to a top speed relatively quickly, and that's something that's very important if you're a quarterback who likes to run, because he can get past the initial defensive line, and once he does that, then he's off, and he's easily able to pick up a decent gain. There is also this play where it once again is going to be a cover one blitz, and those are going to be the routes that the Buffalo Bills receivers will be running, and those two routes could be the routes that Josh Allen could look to throw to, especially because they have cuts in it, and so towards the sideline, that could be a good situation for Josh Allen to try to throw the ball to. However, one thing you're going to notice right off the bat is that jet right there is doing a great job of getting in this play, getting around his block, and trying to make a play on Allen. However, the key word in that sentence is going to be trying to make a play on Allen. Look at how Allen is going to be able to run around and get around that play. Granted, it's a tough play to make if you are a defensive lineman trying to tackle Josh Allen in open space. It's just a tough play, but he did do his job on that one in disrupting the play, and now Josh Allen isn't really in the angle that he wants to be in to try to make a good throw. And not only that, but both the guys who he could throw it to are getting pretty well covered here. So against a lot of lesser quarterbacks, they just have to throw it away. But because Josh Allen does have that running ability, he's able to just run in and get a touchdown. It's just a great tool to have in your tool belt of having a quarterback who can make those types of plays. It just does so much for you as an offensive coordinator and as an offense. Even when plays don't work out, there's still a chance of them working out because of Josh Allen's running ability. There's just one other way that every play could work out. And it also just makes things so frustrating as a defense, where you do everything right. Your defensive lineman does a great job of flushing him out of the pocket. Your secondary does a good job of covering everyone, but then he's just able to run in and get a touchdown anyways. It just makes things so frustrating when you're playing against him. I always feel like there's nothing more frustrating as a defense than going up against a quarterback who can run the ball well. It's just infuriating. As a Bucs fan, that's why I hate when we play the Panthers, because Cam Newton is just so annoying. The way he'll always just seem to, on 3rd down and 3s, find 4-yard rushes. It's the most infuriating thing. And Josh Allen does kind of have some Cam Newton-like tendencies. I mean, he is a big guy who can run the ball well. He's very fun to watch, too. He's one of the more fun to watch quarterbacks in the league. I can't put him any higher because I do feel like he makes some rookie mistakes. And that's just something that you can't get around. He will make a lot of those mistakes. I also think it should be mentioned that the Buffalo Bills might have been the worst situation out of any team in the league last year. There's a couple of contenders. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals were definitely one. But in terms of rookie quarterback, I can't imagine much worse situations than what Josh Allen had to deal with. But even with that, he looked pretty promising in certain games and definitely has a lot of potential, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he'll do with the rest of his career.